Hello and welcome to the second part of Sports Talk right here on Tameside Radio. I'm Mark Phillip, Head of Sport at Quest Media Network, and coming up in this week's show, we have a special Ron Hull tribute. Now, the legendary marathon runner was laid to rest this afternoon following his sad passing on May 23rd at the age of 82. Ron was a huge inspiration not just to experienced runners but beginners as well, with his enthusiasm and helpful advice. Now, a few years ago, Chris Bird, the executive chairman of Quest Media Network, spoke to Ron about some of his highlights amongst other things. So without further hesitation, here's what Ron had to say to Chris at the question and answer session a few years ago.
I think, first of all, what I'd like to say, Ron, is delighted that you're here and supporting us. And I think with you going around lots of different companies now, you see now companies like UK Fast having their own running clubs. You see more and more of that now.
Yep, it's a good thing too.
Yeah.
It certainly got, every company's got a base, and my thoughts are that almost everybody can run, and the more they run, the better they'll be mentally and physically. And to have a sort of club that actually goes to competitions and things like that is even better, because I think people could get bored from just running with no objective in mind, but a race is always something to hang your training on.
You mentioned something to me a couple of weeks ago, and I think most people in the room will have heard of a guy called Dave Brailsford, who was obviously the lead of getting cycling absolutely to the number one in this country, now the world, with Sky. And Dave is known for marginal gains. But little did I know that the marginal gains actually started here. Because Ron told me about a story about how he changed his style of running, because he stopped running in socks because he felt that the sweat was going into his socks, made his socks heavier, so he couldn't run as fast. Just tell us a story what you did.
In a marathon, if it's a hot day, you tend to put water on your head, but that sort of drips down and it ends up in your shoes. And if you weigh the shoes and the socks together, it's a lot of extra weight that you're actually having to bring through and waste on what should be going into actually propelling yourself forward. So I stopped wearing socks for racing, that is. But because sometimes the shoes that you wore in races, and I've got some of my shoes which I won the Boston Marathon in some memorabilia there, I show them later, were extremely light. But sometimes inside, where the tongue was stitched in, you'd get blisters or whatever. So I'd walk around the house in those and walk around the garden in them, so that my feet got absolutely used to wearing the shoes without the socks, and it worked. And I don't do it now because I don't know. In those days, I was looking for every scrap of
Marginal gain.
Marginal gain, yeah, exactly.
Now, people will see in a couple of the pictures, certainly Boston, the famous photograph of you going over the line in the string vest. Yeah. Why the string vest?
Well, a lot of the games are held in summer.
String vest very big in North Manchester, by the way, look. Correct.
Yeah. And I think I was getting ready for the European Games in Athens, and I ran a 20-mile road race in Liverpool, Huyton it was called. It was called the Pembroke 20, and I tried cutting off, strips underneath here so I could sort of get more air to go over the body, because once the body sweats, it needs to be exposed to the air for evaporation, and evaporation means cooling. But I ran this 20-mile road race, and it was in this cut-off vest, but it didn't stop me running well. It was just awkward when I've got to keep pulling it round here and adjusting it there. But it was at 20 miles. It was a 4-lap race, and I got round the first lap, and from the gun, and I'd just been given a pair of shoes from a company called Reebok, which I'd designed, which had no laces, just an elastic piece over the front of the thing to keep the shoe on. And I just shot off from the start, and I just went into the lead. And I got round the first lap. This is 5 miles marker, and the timekeeper shouted 23 something. I thought, 23 for 5 miles? If you double that up, it's 46 for 10. I turned round and I swore, actually. I said, learn to read the flipping watch. Anyway, I carried on, went round, came back round again, got to the 5 mile point. 47 something, and this is halfway through a 20 mile road race. Anyway, I kept going, and I finished up with 1 hour 36 minutes and 28 seconds, and that's 2 48 mile 10 mile races on the trot. And I thought, right, I'm in shape. but I've got to get rid of this flipping horrible vest that's not working. So it didn't come to me in the bath, but just one moment I just thought, string vest, full of big holes. And I'm talking about the traditional army string vest, which they wore underneath the kit to insulate them if it's very cold. The pockets of air in the mesh would keep them warm. And it worked like a dream. I just, that was it. I won that European Games Championship in Athens, which was probably the greatest day of my life in a way, because I'd never won anything really much before that. And it went from Marathon to Athens. It finished in the old stadium that they built for the 1896 Olympics. My mother and father were there, and my 2 children were there. And I didn't get the lead until 1 kilometre to go. And I could see this guy slowing up, and I was getting tired, by the way. I ran that race without having a drink. I never took a drink. And at about 6 miles, maybe more, I saw this plastic cup on the floor, and it was all spilled. And I just thought, that guy's weak. He's had to have a drink. So it just spurred me on a little bit more to go and catch him. And with 1K to go, I caught the guy. It's a guy called Gaston Rolants, a Belgian who was the Olympic steeplechase champion back in '64. And when I got to him, I'd never been in this position before. I thought, what the hell do I do now? Do I sit on him and try and out-sprint him? And I just thought, no, I'm going. So I went and I shot right past him. We came down towards the stadium. We're on the right-hand side of the dual carriageway. I went to cut across the central reservation into the stadium and nearly got knocked down by a Land Rover, which had been leading the race. Nearly killed me. And then I heard these cheers, and I thought, oh, please catch him. I looked round, he wasn't there. It was just the crowd sort of cheering for me to go in. So I went and won that. And I wore it again in the trial for the Commonwealth Games. Oh no, wore it again in Boston, but that was a mistake in a way, because I got to Boston and expecting decent weather, and the day of the race turned out it was absolutely throwing it down, and there was a headwind. And again, I'd forgotten my tracksuit top as well. I left that in the room where I was staying. All I could smell was wet wool as it got soaked. But anyway, I just thought, well, I've got no choice here. So set off into the wind. I'm blowing my hands to try and get them warm because it's so cold. And I left a guy who'd just beaten me the year before in a marathon in Japan. I left him behind, and he caught me again, and I just said to him, where have you been all my life? Just to upset him a bit. And he dropped out at 10 miles. So on I went, and
Games.
Won the race, and I thought, well, the first Briton ever to win the Boston Marathon. And to tell you how it went, how did I get to the Boston Marathon? The Roadrunners Club of Britain had a whip round to pay the airfare. And that's why I was staying with a family. When I got to Boston, the race director said, well, we'll put you up with a family out in Winchester. All right, fair enough. But that was good. I could do my training. They were a lovely family. I could eat what I wanted. But when I got over the line, a journalist came up to me and said, oh, by the way, you've just run 2:10:30 and knocked over 3 minutes off the course record.
Brilliant, brilliant. I've got a question here from one of the team, and it's they obviously follow a lot about the stories about you, about every day that you run. How do you find? I mean, I find it difficult to run every day, and because I drive past you in the morning when you're running, and I'm hiding from you. How do you do it every day? What makes you get up in the morning and say, I'm still going to run today? 50 years unbroken record?
51 now.
51 years. Yeah. 51 years and has run every single day.
Not difficult, because when I ran in the 64 Tokyo Olympics, I ran the 10,000 and the marathon, and I went out there with some fast times, the second fastest time in the world for the marathon, etc., and the fastest European 10,000 metre runner. And after 6 weeks being stuck in a dormitory on an ex-American army camp, I just went to pieces. I just had a young son at home, and my wife was suffering a little bit from post-natal depression. And I got back and I just said, I'm bloody sick of this. Anyway, I think I had 8 or 10 days off. And then I thought, hang on a minute, I'm better than this. This is stupid. I'm going to start running every day. And on December the 20th, I ran. And I thought, well, this isn't enough. On December the 21st, I started to run twice a day and once on Sundays. And I did that 13 times a week for 26.2 years. Why the 26.2?
Because that's the size of a marathon.
It is, and I was getting fed up of running twice a day. I said, I want to cut this, but it's got to be a significant date. And it was after 26.2 years, I started to run once a day, and it was easy, and I really enjoyed it.
Brilliant.
So, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. You get up and you go out.
There's a lot of 5k runners out there, but they want to progress to 10k. What do you need to make that step up? If you're just doing your 5ks, but you want to go to the next level?
Well, in training, I say, I mean, we could talk about the marathon here. The more running you do, the better you'll be. If there's a limit to that, you can go too far. I mean, I once was doing 150 miles a week and then did a week of 160. I just went off form. I went to Japan and got hammered in a race. And thought, that didn't work. But how did I know all this? I kept a training log. None of these apps or anything like that. I mean, I've got foolscap books this high, but I put in that training log what all the training I was doing, and where I was making a mistake, I changed it. And I think that's what people should do. And you can just, you know, the 10k isn't that difficult if you're doing 5ks. I mean, I recommend park runs. They're brilliant. They say they're not races, but actually they are. You know, you tend to push yourself a little bit. So keep a training log. Find out what you're doing, see what works for you, and the more you do, the better you'll be. And I gave an example of my wife. In 1988, she ran the London Marathon. It was a couple of days before her 51st birthday. The longest run she ever did was 8.5 miles, and the biggest week of training she had was 18 miles. And she ran all the way, never stopped. She did the marathon in 4 hours and 11 minutes. It was 4 hours 22, but in those days, they didn't have the chip. So she took her 11 minutes, yeah, to walk to the start line, and then she started. So she really ran 4:11. So, you know, she wasn't a runner, but she kept going out with me occasionally doing little bits, and it helped her.
Last question, Ron. You're known as being a runner, but a lot of people also know you as an innovator and a businessman, and you've created 2 great brands, Ron Hill and Hilly.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about more Ron, the innovator, and also the businessman. Where did that all happen?
Well, you mentioned the innovations in running gear. I was 6 years at university, and then I got a PhD and had to find a job. But somebody had lent me some money. He was a guy called Jack Davies. He was treasurer of the East Lancs Cross Country Association. He was a good friend. He said, look, I'll lend you 200 quid. You put the deposit down on a house. I said, great. So I thought, I'm going to be working in Droylsden. What do I have to do to do my training? So I thought, right, I'll have to run to work and back. Okay, I got a compass in an ordnance survey map with a 5-mile radius. I picked this circle, 5-inch radius, inch to the mile. So right, you can start looking now. And I found a house in Romiley, which is exactly on the 5-mile pencil line. But by the time I'd run to work, sort of zigzagging on the roads and stuff like that, it turned out to be 7.5 miles. So that was it. Run to work and run home. It's the best way of training. And on Sundays I'd do either 21 miles or one year I did 28 miles once a month for a Sunday run. That was hard work. It was around Wild Boar Clough. I'm not kidding you. It was terrible. Hills and everything. And that was bad. I remember it was snowing once in winter. I did set off on a 28-mile run in snow, and I did it. Another time I set off and it was stinking hot. And I never used to take water for drinking on a long run. It's just crazy. You see people running now with like 2-litre bottles. You think, what? Oh, you'll have a shower with it or what? And I got to Lyme Park, and I thought, God, I'm so thirsty. So I dived into a cow trough and just had a drink, and that's the only time I've drunk on a long run. Happy days. So what happens when you're running to work? You're running to work and back, and you're just wearing the kit that you can get given having been to the Olympics, cotton shorts and cotton vests and stuff like that. I thought, this is not good enough. running home at night and stuff like that. So I developed the garment called the Trackster, which was
How many people have got Tracksters? Yeah, all of a certain age, you see, we're all...
Yeah. Well, they used to be cotton. When it rained, they got wet through, so you're running along holding these pants up. So I said, well, I'm working with synthetic fabrics in Droylsden. Why don't we have synthetics? So we went to nylon, and then eventually we went to polyester, which doesn't hold any moisture whatsoever, and that worked.
So everybody now that's got the tight leggings on and running, the Trackster started it.
It did really, yeah, it just bottoms. And then running home in the rain, you're getting flipping wet through, what do? Let's do a waterproof jacket. Then you're running home in the rain and the dark, and the traffic's whizzing all over the place. I could get knocked down. I was the first person to put Scotch-Lite onto garments so that the traffic can see you. So that's how it started, basically. It was what's needed when you're running all that distance. And it worked a treat, and in the end I got out of industry. I'd already started a business called Ron Hill Sports, and I was lucky we had a small factory in Hyde, which is now part of the M67. The guy would make small runs for me, and that worked. But I got a bit of a push in the end because I was told, after having competed in the Munich Olympics, I got a message saying, the office manager, or the manager of the whole laboratory, he came in and said, I've been told from higher up, head office, that we think you've had a good run for your money now, and from now on, if you want to represent Britain or England, you'll have to take your annual holiday, take your annual leave. And I'm thinking, what are the kids going to do for a holiday if I start doing that? So I said, right, here's my resignation. And the guy didn't like me so much. He said, you will work your 6 months' notice, won't you? Anyway, that's how it happened.
So was born Ron Hill Sports.
Hey?
And so was born Ron Hill Sports.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that was Chris Bird speaking to legendary marathon runner Dr. Ron Hill MBE a few years ago. And of course, our deepest sympathies go to Ron's family and friends, but what a legacy he leaves behind. Well, after weeks of excitement, Euro 2020 starts tonight with Turkey versus Italy. On Saturday, it's Wales versus Switzerland, Denmark taking on Finland, and Belgium are taking on Russia. And then on Sunday, it's the big one as England host Croatia. Now, in this week's Tameside Reporter and Glossop Chronicle, you can find a Euro 2020 pull-out, which includes tables, fixtures, the latest odds courtesy of Betfred, and even an England flag. So, speaking of this week's Tameside Reporter and Glossop Chronicle, there's plenty of sport featured as usual, and leading the back page of this week's reporter is professional boxer Charlie Schofield, because he won the English Super Middleweight title last weekend. Now, the 28-year-old beat Mickey Ellison via unanimous decision live on Fight Zone TV in the Sheffield Arena car park, and that brought an end to a frustrating period for Charlie, who comes from Droylsden, because of the stop-start nature of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, moving into some football news now, and Curzon Ashton manager Steve Cunningham has been assembling his squad ahead of next season in the National League North, and as reported on last week's Sports Talk, 6 players have departed the club, including the Nash's longest serving player, goalkeeper Cameron Mason, who was at the Tameside Stadium for 6 years. However, Cunningham has signed centre-back Harry Flowers, who was with Curzon last season, and this is what Cunningham had to say about the arrival of Flowers.
So really delighted to announce Harry Flowers as our first signing. We had him on loan last year. A lot of the fans obviously won't know Harry because they've only seen snippets on maybe a stream if they've seen that. Harry was someone that was integral to our plans this year. Towering, commanding centre half at 6'5", 6'6". With a real strong personality of a player that still wants to make it in the game as high as he possibly can, and he sees Curzon Ashton as a great opportunity and a platform to achieve that. Delighted that he's turned down a large number of clubs with bigger fortunes than we can offer, but I think that shows the type of character that Harry actually is, and the fans will be delighted once they've seen him play why we've actually secured him.
And the club has also signed Matt Challoner, an experienced defender and proven winner at a higher level. This is what Cunningham had to say about the arrival of Challoner.
So another great signing in Matt Challoner, experienced campaigner at this level, and also the one above. when you look at his CV, great pedigree as a proven winner with Chorley, a brief spell in the playoffs with Boston, and last year also with Southport. So all big clubs at this level of football. And what Matt does bring is that experience, that tenacity, another solid defender. I felt that we lacked that real experience last year, and that was something that we did identify, me and Damien, when we were sort of targeting the players that we're looking at this year, to make us better from what we learnt last year. And Matt ticks all them boxes, and we're delighted to have signed him.
And arguably the biggest signing over summer for Curzon is striker Dom Knowles. He was with the club last season, and they've managed to retain his services despite interest from clubs higher up the pyramid. So that's a great coup for Steve Cunningham. Well, elsewhere, former Hyde United manager Darren Kelly has taken on a new role at League Two outfit Newport County. Kelly, who enjoyed great success while managing the Tigers from 2016 to 2019, which included a promotion and an appearance in the FA Cup first round against MK Dons, has left his role at Scarborough Athletic and has since become Newport's sporting director. Well, as usual on Sports Talk, I was joined in the studio earlier today by Betfred's Peter Spencer to preview Euro 2020, and we also have the latest odds on a number of markets and this weekend's Super League fixtures. Peter, it's finally arrived. Euro 2020 begins tonight. It's Turkey v Italy. What are the odds looking like for this one?
Well, the odds are that England are second favourites, 6-1 with Betfred. That's the best price you can get anywhere to actually win the competition outright. There's loads of movements on the other markets. For instance, Kante from France and Chelsea, of course, he's coming from 100-1. 2 months ago to be player of the tournament to 14-1, right up there amongst the favourites now. Mbappe is the favourite at 9-1 with Betfred. Ronaldo's figures highly at 12-1. Another big mover is Jack Grealish. He started off at 40-1 only 2 weeks ago. Played excellently in the 2 warm-up games against Romania and also Austria, and he's now 25-1 to be player of the tournament. I do think they'll start with him. And I think there's a big question mark over Raheem Sterling. He might even be replaced by any of the Mancunians, Rashford or Phil Foden, because he hasn't been in good form for City, and not great form for England either, although he does seem to play better for England. It's just his finishing is the problem there. Yeah, you can't stick with Sterling, can you? He's had a pretty awful campaign, but you never know. That's kind of like a quirky thing with these tournaments. You can have a bad season in the Premier League and then you enter the Euros and you have an absolute blinding performance, don't you? Yeah, that's certainly true, and he has shown a lot of loyalty to Sterling, and an admirable quality, of course, for a manager. He rarely goes into a game with him not starting. But just think what Sterling be like on the bench. Now that would be impressive, because he'd come on wanting to prove himself, thinking at the back of his mind, I should have started this game. So that's my prediction. I think Sterling will start on the bench. I think there's question marks about Rashford, frankly, as well. He's not been in this supreme form for United, but I think he'll probably start. And Kane is a guaranteed starter, of course. Rashford would be very important in that he can do a job as an outright centre forward as well. If Kane get injured or he's out, not begging it in. Yeah, definitely. Well, just to touch up again on the player of the performance, Bruno Fernandes. I believe he's quite highly tipped. Yeah, that's Fred Dones, my boss. That's his choice to be player of the tournament. He's 20-1. A lot will depend, as he said to me this morning, how far the nation goes. So Portugal, of course, if they get into the semi-finals or even the final, they've got a very hard group to get out of. They've been heavily backed, Portugal. They're now 9-1 to win the tournament outright. Fernandes 20-1 to be player of the tournament. Ronaldo 12-1 to be player of the tournament. The biggest bet we've got in the whole country is £10,000 bet by someone, I think in London though, but I'm checking that because they've got more money than us, haven't they? £10,000 at 5-1 on France to be the outright winners. And another big mover is Lukaku, who's well known in these parts, to be the top scorer of the whole tournament. He is now 6-1. to be the top scorer in the tournament. He has got 60 goals in 93 appearances for Belgium. So you can see that he is in rip-roaring form, and he's 6-1 with Betfred.
Wonderful season for Romelu Lukaku. I wish I had 10 grand to put on a bet, I really, really do. But looking at Saturday's fixture, we've got Wales taking on Switzerland. Peter, do you have any odds for us on this fixture?
Yeah, well, we have got a special. England to win their first match against Croatia on Sunday. Wales to win their first match. That's first up of the home nations. They're on Saturday, aren't they? And against Switzerland. And Scotland to win against the Czech Republic. Betfred have got those 3 victories for our home nations teams, for the really patriotic punter and perhaps the optimistic punter, you could say. 18-1 for all our 3 teams to win.
Brilliant stuff. Well, in this week's Tameside Reporter and Glossop Chronicle, we've done a big pull-out on Euro 2020. It's got all the tables in, all the fixtures. We've even got a big England flag that you can stick up in your car or your bedroom window or wherever you want to put it. It's fantastic. We've also got loads of odds for the outright winners. So you've had a look at it. You're impressed with it, aren't you, Peter?
I am indeed, yeah. It's tremendous that the nation's getting behind England and the other home nations, of course, to a degree. But what I like about it is that it's given us all such a lift after what we've been through. Got crowds back, limited numbers, of course, and also gives us something a bit different to think about after what the nation's been through over the last year and a bit. Yeah,
definitely. Well, you just mentioned the limited numbers in terms of the crowds. Do you think that will have a massive impact on who could possibly win the competition?
Well, it'll certainly help England because if we get that far, because the semi-finals and the final are at Wembley, so that'll be tremendous. It does repeat what happened in 1966, of course, when we last won an international tournament. And quite frankly, it is about time we won one of these tournaments, isn't it? Anything can happen in the Euros. We've had Denmark winning it before, and we've had Greece winning it before. But this time, you just got a feeling that this could be England's year. I think there's questions about the defence and the goalkeeper, and up front, if Harry Kane doesn't get on the score sheet as often as he would hope. But the midfield players are absolutely tremendous. I mean, Mason Mount, Phil Foden, Grealish would walk into any team in this tournament. And then we've got the speed kings of Rashford and Sterling, who could do the business if they get back to the form that we know they're capable of. So I think there's high hopes for England this year.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there is an abundance of fantastic midfielders in that England squad. So the Euros does start tonight, and it kicks off with Turkey v Italy. Then on Saturday, locally, I guess, in this country, no, well, not this country, this kind of area, we've got Wales taking on Switzerland. And then the big one for us, on Sunday, it's England taking on Croatia. And then on Monday, we've got Scotland taking on the Czech Republic. But let's take a look at some Betfred Super League news now, Peter, because this weekend we've got Salford taking on Hull KR. And we've also got Warrington hosting Wakefield. So let's have a look at some of these.
Yeah, well, COVID has sadly affected 2 of our local teams. Wigan and Wigan's game at Huddersfield has been called off because of problems with COVID in the camps. And also St Helens, the Betfred Super League leaders, their game at Leeds has been called off as well. But we have got Wolves playing against Wakefield. Wolves are 2-1 favourites to win that, Warrington Wolves. And also we've got Salford Reds, who are really struggling for form. They've only won once this season. They're at Hull KR, who are mid-table team basically. But Hull KR are 2-5 to win that game. If you think Salford could turn it around in this game, they're 11-5 to win, and Joe Burgess is 9-2 to score any time for Salford. The latest odds for winning the Betfred Grand Final outright: Saints are now 7-4. Wigan 5-2. Catalans are interesting. They've come right into good form now. They're 9-2. The second in the Betfred Super League. They could go top if they win on Sunday, and they are playing against the bottom club, Leigh. Leigh are 500-1 to win the Grand Final. The complete and utter outsiders. Salford aren't much better. They're 300-1. Warrington are 6-1. Catalan's right up there now, 9-2 to win the Betfred Super League Grand Final.
Excellent stuff. Well, there is a feast of rugby over this weekend, and of course there is a feast of football over the next 4 weeks. Peter, I for one can't wait. Just before you go, do you have a prediction for this Turkey v Italy game tonight?
Yeah, I think it's. And I was thinking it was quite a dull encounter from our point of view to start a tournament off. I'd like to have seen Holland or France, if it's not going to be England, starting getting the ball rolling, or Portugal or Belgium. I mean, so there's some great teams there. Italy can be a bit dull, but there are a lot of people's dark horses to win the tournament. I think, with it being in Rome, I think it's going to be for Italy to win, but predictably enough, I'm going for 1-0 for Italy.
There we go then. And what about England v Croatia? Next time I'll see you will be on Monday in the aftermath of that result. What are you going for?
Well, sadly, I think England will struggle a little bit in the first match. I could see that being a draw. I think it could be 1-1.
1-1, there you go. That's what Pete's predicted. I'm going to go for a 2-1 England victory. Well, it's been great having you in the studio once again, Peter. Like I mentioned before, if you are in the local area, please do pick up a Tameside Reporter or Glossop Chronicle for the big Euro 2020 pull-out. And if you do fancy a bet on any of the rugby league or football this coming weekend and over the next 4 weeks, Betfred stores are now open, but you can also bet online and via their app. Well, I'm afraid that's it for Sports Talk. However, you can keep up to date with the latest local sports news on our website, questmedianetwork.co.uk.